There's a lot to it, but I've seen also people of all different intellects and backgrounds and psychological dispositions and monetary positions and life values and all that good stuff. People of all natures and walks can make it for sure, I believe.
Hello, everybody. This is Anthony for Investors Underground. Today, I have the opportunity to speak with a tremendous member within the trading community. He's a former professional athlete turned day trader who's made well over seven figures in verified profits. He's a father, husband, and trading educator who has mentored traders who have gone on to make six, seven, and even eight figures in trading profits. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Roland Wolf. Hello, Roland. Thank you for being here and taking the time to speak with me today.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on. I think maybe a few months ago we got to speak and I got to meet you and it was great speaking with you then. So I've been looking forward to coming on the podcast and discussing some stuff with you.
Absolutely, Roland. It was a pleasure to meet you, and we had some great discussion and conversations that weekend that I'm hoping some of the viewers are going to get to see very soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Roland, for those who don't know much about you, I'd like to start by just asking, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing, your childhood, and how you eventually got interested in the stock market and trading?
Yeah, good childhood, amazing parents, man. A son of two immigrants to America. My mother's Korean. She moved here after she was like adopted and brought to America when she was a little girl. And my dad is from Europe, from Belgium. So they both ended up here. So I'm a first generation American. And they worked extremely hard to give me a great life. My mother pushed me super hard in sports, specifically soccer growing up was my sport. Grew up with a bunch of brothers. We all played soccer. So that was my main passion, soccer, taekwondo, you know, good childhood, man. Good childhood. So no real complaints there. Ended up getting a full ride scholarship to Boston University. Played there my freshman, sophomore year. And after that, I decided to stop going to school. I never really wanted to go to school. Um, so halfway through that experience, I decided to play soccer instead. And one of the things about that career path is soccer. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but usually when you're turning 18 all around the world, you're becoming a professional. You're either becoming a professional or you're going to be going to school or doing something else with your life. You know what I mean? So it's kind of unique in that, if you're a baseball player, if you're a football player, you go to school here, you get your degree if you want. Some people graduate early, obviously, or leave before they graduate and go play professionally. But it's super accepted for people to go to school for 4 years and then become a professional in their 20s. So, it was kind of a weird dynamic where I had to go try to be a professional. So that's what I did. I went to Portugal. I was in Portugal for a year, a club called Académica de Coimbra, small town. And that went really well. They wanted to sign a contract and loan me out. It's this whole thing. I don't want to get too much into it. Kind of like minor leagues, right? So I ended up going back to school instead, and I did one more semester, and then I went down to South America. Played down there, ran into an agent. Kind of long story short, ended up in Croatia because the agent said we need to go back to Europe instead, not be down here in Uruguay. And so I got to do some traveling. I went to Croatia. That was the last stop for me in my early 20s. Um, and I got really hurt on that trial, really badly hurt my ankle. They sent me home, and that was kind of the end of my career. I was like 23 at the time, I believe, 24 maybe. And in my head, it was I had to figure out what else to do with my life at that point. I knew I was supposed to have reached a certain level by that point, at least as a soccer player. If I could go back in time, I may have done it a little bit differently and told myself to keep pursuing it because I was really good and I had worked so hard at this thing for my whole life. So I only got to play professionally for a very tiny period of time and not at the heights I ever wanted to. And it left a huge void. And that kind of brought me into my mid 20s, which was a period of being lost, a period of partying, making up for all the parties I didn't get to do because instead of going to parties, I was training. I had tournaments. I had to stay healthy. I had to press myself physically and excel, in my sport. So I kind of used that opportunity along with, unfortunately, I got hooked on opiates after that. I got hooked on painkillers because of the ankle injury and the subsequent surgeries that I had, um, which was a whole nother thing. It's the loss of my sport and my life mission left a huge void for me that I couldn't fill at all. And I didn't know at the time this is what was happening at all. I just thought I was having fun and partying and I was addicted to these painkillers because of the pain. But really, I was like filling this void and I didn't realize it until it was too late what I was doing, which was going down a path of drug addiction. And at the end of that, at the very bottom of that, unfortunately, it brought me to the streets and I was addicted to opiates and street drugs and homeless for a while, not like for a long time. I wasn't like on the streets forever, but it was a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks was the bottom for me, where I went from like I told you, great upbringing, professional soccer player for a small period of time, but throughout my life, reaching heights, And so you would never imagine that this is where I would be. I would never imagine, at least at that time. So that led me to rehab, man. Went to rehab, got myself right, uh, and stayed sober for a really long time. A year, just helping other guys stay sober. That's how you stay sober. For those who don't know, I was in AA, sponsoring people. That's like literally one-on-one, working with guys one-on-one, letting them know this is what I had to do to stay sober. And it's a whole series of steps, rewiring of my mind and my spirit and my soul and stuff like that. And all that good stuff. And then helping other people do that. So it was kind of this crazy period of time for me where that was actually the most rewarding in my life. Believe it or not, that period of time after reaching such lows in my life. And so there was a lot of meaning that came behind it. And at the end of it, my now wife returned to me because we had been together. I've known her since we were little kids, since we were 13 years old. And we dated in high school. And then we dated just we dated after my soccer career and we just kind of happened to get back together. So she was with me actually through that period where I went to the lows too, and I had to leave me because I was terrible. It's the worst. And I didn't want to be helped. So she left. And through that, she after I had been sober for a long time and helping people, we ended up back together. We ended up back together. She saw that I had changed and I was a totally different man. And we ended up having our first kid in 2014. And this is getting to the trading now because now I'm like looking at life through this different lens. Okay, I have a son and I'm back with the woman of my dreams. She, that's what she is, love of my life, right? Just kind of fortunate. And I found her when I was young and I thought I lost her. So now we're back together but I'm still left with this dilemma that I didn't finish college. You know what I mean? Not only did I not finish college, but I'm just got out the back end of the lowest period of my life. I don't even have credit. I have the worst credit. I'm like, when you go to these places in life, bad things happen. Credit, money, all that stuff, it's all jacked up. So that led to this chapter now, which was the total rebuilding. I call this chapter 3 of my life. One was my childhood in soccer. 2 was the drug addiction and partying and loss of everything. And 3 is this, where we are today. Okay. And this began once, not after my son was born, but after my second child. I have 4 now. My second child was on her way. My wife got pregnant. It ignited and I was already starting to go back to get my undergrad, to finish my undergrad. And the plan was to go to law school for me at that point. That's what my father is. And so that seemed like a natural idea. I hated the idea, Anthony. I hated it. But you have kids, things change. It's not you. I don't care what I hate. I'm going to do something. I'm going to make the money for my children, right? So when my daughter came around, I had 9 to 5. I was actually working at my dad's office, and I'm like, I got to figure something else out. So I put a few $100 into, at the time it was called Capital 1360. They don't have it anymore, but it's an investment account. And I Googled the cheapest stocks I could find, and I didn't even know there was small cap I didn't know anything. I just Googled cheap stocks to buy, right? I bought Bank of America with half of it, and the other half I bought Barrick Gold, just two random companies. I didn't know. I knew Bank of America, no clue. I assumed they had something to do with gold, right? Bought them both. Barrick Gold doubled over the next 6 months. Bank of America did nothing. But that was the eye opener for me. I was like, whoa, that was pretty cool. Like I didn't have to do anything, and that money did something, you know? I was always kind of interested in the stock market, but this was the confirmation. Like this is actually real. And if I figure out how I can do that faster, that was the question. That's what led me to day trading, because I'm like, okay, that was awesome with Barrick Gold. How can we do this faster? That's it. And Google, right? That's what got me to the stock market. That's how I started trading.
That's a tremendous story. And it's really interesting to hear all that you've been through and to see how much success you have now. And one of the things I've always noticed about you is just how humble you are with your success. I've seen you go through, whether it's online, socials, or in person, spending a lot of time with the people that you're working with to help educate and give yourself and everything that you know to them. Do you attribute some of that characteristic to all that you've been through and understanding just how helpful it is to have someone there to keep a hand out?
Yeah, actually, it's a great question, because I think it's a huge part of it was me getting sober. Me going through the lows that I went through in life have molded me very much so as a teacher. It's molded my philosophy on teaching and reaching out and helping people. And I think it's helped me because the truth is, you think that you just get off drugs and the chemicals are out of your system and things are okay. It's not. There's a lot of things that go on that you have to rewire psychologically to stay sober. I haven't touched an opiate since 2012. I've had multiple surgeries since then. I say no painkillers other than whatever they had given me during the operation or whatever post-op via intravenously. Um, it's a very permanent kind of thing that happened. But for the teaching aspect, I know it's helped a lot. I know that it helped me to work one on one with somebody. And it's funny because it's not just that experience of the lows, but it was my experience as a soccer player. Uh, I only got ahead of my peers through two things, because talent alone, as you know, as everyone knows, is not enough in anything to excel to get to that next level. And I was very talented. I'm pretty talented in a lot of aspects, but the extra work, it's the hard work. There was this interview with Kobe where he was talking about how, these kids, they go to practice every day, they train 2 hours a day, and that's it. But if you're going before school an hour, 2 hours a day, well, you're getting double the amount of work in that these people are doing today. So maybe not today, it doesn't matter as much, but 100 days from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you're it becomes an exponential growth compared to your peers. So a lot of stuff like that. And so it's the hard work, but it was also, I had one-on-one coaches. I had a strength and conditioning coach that worked with me. I had um, a speed and agility coach I worked with. I had a track coach, literally a track coach. I worked with this Jamaican guy who was amazing. But these are the people that got me to where I got to in soccer. It was, if I had just shown up with the rest of the team and trained every day, I wouldn't have gotten a full ride. I wouldn't have got to travel and go to Europe and South America and be taken seriously, especially as an American at the time. So, yeah, it's a great question. It's certainly molded everything.
And I think you bring up a great point too, which is about compounding, not just being talented, or whether that's in soccer, sports, or even with the market, right? There's a lot of people who are talented naturally, but that only goes so far in something as competitive as soccer or something as competitive as trading, where now you're competing with algorithms and AI and computers that are processing just thousands of data points in a given second, right? So I think you bring up a great point. One of the questions that I had for you, Roland, was about your soccer and your days and how much time you spent preparing and optimizing yourself for soccer. Do you find that some of those skills and that skill set and those experiences they transfer over to what you need to succeed in trading?
Yes, 100%. The drive, the work ethic, that kind of stuff totally comes into play. The competitive spirit comes into play. That sort of passion, I guess. At the same time, I found some aspects of being an athlete were kind of hurting my trading. The winning mentality specifically was the one that I had to kind of get over. It took a long time to understand, right? I would, someone could have told me this, but I think I still would have had to go through what I went through anyways to understand it, which is that a well executed good loss is the same as a win, if not better at times. At least when I'm talking to my students as well, I feel great when I cut a loss. I did my job, in other words. But then I could also relate that to soccer. I had games where I played really well, and we lost. You know what I mean? But I still was proud of my performance. And I had games where we won, um, and I knew I could have done way better. It's kind of like those trades where maybe it went in your favor, but you got lucky. I try to make sure I am hard on myself in those scenarios. Um, but the losing thing was the main thing I struggled with was okay. And the fact that it's not as predictable in terms of, listen, I put in this much work at soccer, I get this much better. I lift this amount of times a week and eat this much, I grow this much in terms of muscle mass. The science behind all that stuff, the sports science, I wasn't as it's not as necessarily tangible here. The results are not necessarily as tangible, and there are just so many variables, I guess you could say, that are out of your control. Whereas with soccer, of course, many variables out of my control, but I controlled my diet. I controlled everything else. And I think that aspect as well helps with the trading. So if I can control everything that I can control and let the chips fall where they may, then I'm trusting myself, I guess. I just have to change my plans and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Some people reference, saying best loser wins, or being
Yeah,
able
totally.
to take a loss and not let that affect them psychologically, or them wanting to just revenge trade or make it all back the next day, or something like that. One of the questions I had for you was, what were some of the early lessons that you learned um, when you first started trading?
Oh man. I just remember the beginning of trading being so confusing and exciting. I just remember being so amped every day. That's all I remember. Amped and confused would be the two words that would characterize that kind of early trading. Um, I mean, the very first trade I placed, I don't remember if it was NAVB or NWBO, but I remember the trade itself very vividly, which is I opened to E Trade. This is after that Barrett Gold thing. I'm like, okay, so now I got to figure out how to trade. Um, so I went in the chat. I Someone was talking about one of these tickers. I bought it. It went up 30% in 15 in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it was. And I went in chat like, hey, I'm up 30%. It's my first ever trade. And everyone's like, sell it. And I sold it 30%, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it was. And I had just made 100%, but it took 6 months on Barrett Gold. So that immediately was the proof that got me so hooked. I also am not one of those people who needed to paper trade, or maybe I needed to, but I didn't. Okay. I just put some money in E Trade. I didn't even have a chart. I was on the website clicking refresh. I was just like, that was the beginning of my trading. And then I lost 10 in a row chasing alerts after that. So that's the actual beginning of the trading, because I was like, I figured I could do the alerts thing, pad my account while I learn. Why not? That was the whole thing. And then I just remember, yeah, amped and confused are the best two words I could have. I'd wake up 10 minutes before the market open. I'd look at my scanner, whatever the top percent gainer was. And if it started to the first minute, if it started to go up, I would be in. That was my trading. You know what I mean? And then I get chopped out because I cut losses quickly. That's all I knew to do was to cut losses quickly. So um, that was it. That was pretty much how the early trading was, and it took so long for that to calm down. So that was kind of the first hurdle was what everyone has. I'm impulsively trading, no grasp of what risk reward was, no grasp of a strategy, and then no understanding that that strategy goes in and out of play and the markets and the macro and the dilution and the everything. I knew nothing, just like anyone. But I know I liked it. And more importantly, I knew I people like Tim Grittani, I had seen that I trusted to be real and and that were able to make this stuff make sense to me eventually.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of traders listening that can relate to what your first experience was like trading and just how exciting it can be, confusing it can be, impulsive it can be. Was there a certain point when you realized trading made sense for you?
Well, I had two aha moments along the way that changed my trajectory. Okay. Um, the first was watching a Tim Sykes video of one of his conferences back in the day. And LX21, Greg, gets on and talks about being a professional, right? This was a huge light bulb moment because I was just being a degenerate up to that point. I was just getting to the market 5 minutes, 10 minutes before the open, like I said, usually just rolling out of bed because I was West Coast. It seemed too early at the time for me. The market's open at 6:30 and I'd be there at 6:25 with one eye open trying to figure out what to chase. Amped. Okay. Um, he said, be a professional. And he was talking about his morning routine. And he was saying that he was up at 4 a.m. Right. And he's Arizona as well, where I was at the time. And I remember thinking, holy crap, like this guy's up at 4 a.m. and I'm up at and then he talks about if you want to do this as a profession, treat it like be a professional, essentially. Treat it like a profession. That was light bulb moment. I go, okay, like soccer. Treat it like in my head, I'm like, treat it like I did in soccer, and I can get good at this, better at this faster at least, right? And so immediately that was the hugest shift. I started doing that. Didn't go straight to four, but at within I'd say a month or two, I was at four to 4:30. No matter what, I'd be up creating a plan. That immediately changed the game for me. Just that alone, okay, just being up, as silly as that sounds. Um, and then the second one was when I saw Trading Tickers for the first time by Tim Grittani. Um, Still to this day, I call it my Bible personally. And I'm a long trader. I am long bias, which we'll get into later, I'm sure. But that's the first time where I saw, and at the time he was just at the height of his short selling powers at that time, just really amazing. And the guide was so good and organized. And but more importantly, what happened was there was this light bulb moment where I saw my entries matching his. And as a long, that's not a good thing. Does that make sense? As a long, since he's shorting near the tops of these things, and then he's profitable when they go down, and then he buys it back. Well, literally, I had the same entries as him, but just the opposite. So I am buying Tim Grittani's shorts. Then when he needs to buy the position back at the bottom, and I'm capitulating on my position, I am selling my shares back to him who needs to cover, and he makes money and I lose money. I'm the exact wrong part of this trade. It put so much into perspective for me. It's like the dark side, that I finally understood. It's like in Stranger Things, there's the upside down. That's what it was. I'm like, holy crap, if people have seen Stranger Things. It's like this whole other universe that exists within my universe, and it's the opposite, and they make money the opposite way. That was the biggest aha moment in terms of what led me to every strategy I've created since that day. And I remember looking at my wife in the car. I turned to her because I'm watching Trading Tickers on my phone with a headphone in. And I go, and she goes, what? She thought something serious. I go, I've been buying Tim Grittani's shorts. And she's like, what does that mean? I go, I'm never doing it again, because I wasn't even listening to her. She didn't care, but that I do remember that moment very vividly, those two moments. And yeah,
Those are two great traders that you referenced, Greg and Tim. Great people to be learning from and to be inspired by. Absolutely. Um, would you say that without them, you'd be a completely different type of trader?
I don't know. I don't know exactly where I'd be. I don't even think I would be anywhere because it was literally those couple sentences from Greg that spurred me in a different direction. And then and that direction is what led me to purchase material, because prior to that I was just honestly I joined Tim Sykes's penny stocking silver, like it's his cheap one of his cheapest alert subscriptions pretty much. So I could go copy trades and have a chat and stuff like that and have some lessons. So while I learned, I could copy alerts. That was my whole plan. um, but and I wasn't taking it seriously. But then after I saw, Greg's speech, I'm like, man, I should also invest in. I need to see what Tim Grattani's doing, pretty much, because that's why I joined in the first place. Even Tim's service, because Tim alone, I wasn't sure. But when I saw Grattani's testimony, I was like, that guy, I could tell for sure is real. And at least in my head at the time, that's how it felt to me. So, and he's the best. You've spoken with him many times. Anyone who knows him, he's just like an awesome, awesome, awesome guy. So, but I can honestly say without that, I don't think we'd be speaking at all. I think I'd be a lawyer right now.
And so I wanted to talk a little bit more, Roland, about your trading style. And for those who aren't familiar with your trading style, in your own words, how would you describe it and where do you find edge in the market?
I would call myself a short bias long. That's kind of how I describe myself. I'm a dip buyer as well. I trade small cap for the most part. I trade whatever's the most volatile. And I'm positional. I'm not so much of a scalper. Okay. I like looking for bigger term reversals. And when I say longer term reversals, it's still intraday. I'm mostly intraday. Um, but I say short bias because I do, like I said, after watching Tim Grattani's trading tickers, my decision was let's get as far away as possible. And just a lot of light bulbs went off because I thought to myself, okay, everyone's always looking for a squeeze. Where do I buy to get a short squeeze, right? Okay, I get it, but that's kind of unpredictable when they're actually going to squeeze or not, especially these days with the algorithms and stuff. Um, so I started I watch his guide and under the lens of where's he covering when he's making money, right? Where's he covering when he's actually has winning trades? Because isn't that also going to be an area where if he's covering and he's successful and it might be the bottom there, then also other shorts are covering in that area. In other words, there should be some demand wherever he's covering. Does that make sense? So that was kind of the path that I was led down. Um, so I say short bias because I loved seeing stocks go down, um, to provide excellent risk reward for my entries, if that makes sense. And then because of that, it leaves me with frameworks in which to trade these really, really, really crappy stocks to the long side. That's the problem. They're all going to zero for the most part. That whatever trades I talked, like my first trades I talked about, I think NWBO or NAVB, those tickers don't exist anymore. They're in OTC land or something. So when you understand that and the macros involved behind all this, which is another big part of what I do, I'm macro based. I want to make sure I'm not being dumped on. I'm fundamental based. I want to make sure they tell you they're dumping on you. So it's really, if you're not doing certain things as a long to eliminate these dangers, it's kind of on you. You know what I mean? At least the way I see it. There are the companies are basically scams. They do these reverse splits because they have to stay compliant with NASDAQ and stay over dollar. They pump them after that to stay over dollar for sure, especially if they start fading towards a dollar within 10 days. And then they're going to dump. They're going to dump shares because they need money. They don't have money. And then they're going to dilute them. They're going to dump all the way back down. It's the cycle that we all see, the penny stock, the micro cap cycle. And no one's above it, right? Outside of like 2020 and 2021 for a little while. So that framework is what kind of led to everything I do today, and the style that I trade in. I'm not in and out of these things too much. I don't like to press my luck too much. I don't look for 1,000% runs and stuff like that. I'm not, like the TPST the other week. Of course, I'm always looking for those to trade to be long in stocks like that. But I haven't made my career by chasing unicorns. You know what I mean? I've made my career by just going kind of against the grain, dip buying, understanding where shorts like to cover, using those covers as a possible area of demand, especially with algorithms these days, and the algorithmic trading action, getting in tune with that kind of stuff, um, and just trying to put it all together to be able to adapt and have a process that's going to get me through the next year and 2 years. And I just want longevity in this game. You know what I mean? If I know I'm not the best trader. I don't make the most money in the world every year. I don't press the hardest size every year, but it's decent enough size for me. And it takes care of my family and everything I needed to take care of. Um, and so I've really finally set, because I have a lot of friends in this industry and even people I've mentored in the past who surpassed me like pretty quickly. And that was kind of hard to see. You know what I mean? It was kind of hard to be like, well, I was mentoring these people. Like, how are they making so much more money than me right now? And I've settled into it's okay. We're all different. We all have different risk tolerance. We all have different ideas. And I'm finally, it took a long time to settle into this. You know what I mean? But I'm in a really great place in terms of all of that. And my trading style, it's meant to pretty much eliminate a lot of the psychological crap. And a lot of that comes down to the way I enter stocks and the nature of my strategies give me some sort of why, enough why at least, instead of just price action. I have quite a lot of things that have to line up for me to risk a lot, so
Do you tend to trade more during a certain time of the day, whether that's the morning opening bell or focusing on the end of the day, or is it pretty much trading throughout the day?
no, I've always, not always, in the beginning I was just like whatever, who knows. I didn't even know there was a such thing as a clock like while I was trading early on. But I am very aware of what time it is. I have setups that revolve around morning trading, which to me is like the first hour and a half, really, of the volatile morning trading. And then I have setups for the last hour and a half or so. But because of the nature of what I do of trying to be long and finding when and where things are going to be turning and when the bigger picture reversals are, especially these days, if I find that those bigger picture reversals off lows that I'm looking for are midday, then I am here midday looking for those, specifically. So I try to be at my computer when I'm supposed to be. And then the rest of the time, I just try to do whatever else, work with students, be with my family, go to the gym, all that good stuff. I'm not a big fan of just sitting here watching charts all day for no reason.
And is there one particular trade or maybe a set of trades that you are really proud of or that you think really exemplifies your style?
Ah, man, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say one specific trade. Um, the thing is, most of the big gains that I've had over time have come from sector momentum, have come from the Bitcoin sector, for example, back in the day. Grew my account through BTSC, BTCS, all these, and they were OTCs, these OTC Bitcoin stocks, and I would buy baskets of them, and swing them over the weekend and make like 500% across some of these things, 300%. Um, but that's one of those things that doesn't come around all the time. In fact, the last time we've seen this year, we've had AI. I did decent on AI earlier this year. And then we had, even right now, we had some Israel stocks. I was hit or miss on those, um, which was kind of a weird, not a real sector momentum, in my opinion. But the oil run last year when Russia invaded Ukraine, stuff I did really well then. And then I had a horrendous rest of 2022, pretty much. So in terms of one set of trades, not specifically that I lean on as like this is the culmination of all my trading wisdom and knowledge or anything like that. I don't think so. I wouldn't say there's one. There's some losses and wins that stand out to me, but um, yeah, nothing in particular that has moved me in one direction or another, I guess you could say.
Okay. And in terms of your style, how does risk management factor in, especially for stocks that you're looking to come down in price, how do you keep yourself safe to make sure that you're not catching, say, a falling knife or something like that? Can you talk a little bit about how you've set up certain rules or procedures to keep yourself safe within your style?
Absolutely. Great question. And and funny you mentioned don't buy a falling knife because that's what kept me from dip buying in the first place. That's what kept me from dip buying because everyone says don't buy a falling knife, you know? And so for me, I'm like, okay, I'm not. And that made sense to me too. I'm like, oh, it's going down. Definitely don't buy that. Right. That's a totally made sense to me. For too long, that's what made sense to me, I guess you could say. And so it was always that, it was always buying strength. It was always buying through high day. It was always buying breakouts, it was always into resistance areas, for breakouts. And it really wasn't until Tim Grittani's guide where I started thinking differently. I'm like, you know what? Let's not even buy a breakout even necessarily. Like those, everyone knows breakouts are so difficult. Breakouts are the most, in my eyes, and we're talking risk management here, but we're also talking trading psychology. They're the most crowded. They are the most volatile psychologically. When you're talking chart psychology and market psychology, it's the worst to me. You got shorts getting squeezed who are freaking out, but you have new shorts waiting to, bash at it if it's going to fail still. You have all the worst traders in the whole world trying to buy it, all the noobs. That's all they know. It's okay. I get it. That was me. That's all they're going to do. They're just going to chase that, right? They're going to try to buy those. And then when it goes inevitably back into the breakout level, if you haven't risked that level and you found some other level, all the noobs who just bought are going to panic. A lot of people are risking the breakout level. New shorts step in. It's just so volatile. So how am I supposed to have good trading psychology or good risk management when this also may be the top as well? That's the whole thing. If this breakout fails, it's a failed breakout. We're buying the top right now. So, and that's kind of all anyone teaches, I guess. Breakouts of certain levels always. And these days, with algorithmic trading, especially, I don't care what the breakout is. If it's a ascending pendant flag, what, any of the, cup and handles and all the patterns and stuff that humans like to play, they're gonna stuff them too. And shorts know this and longs know this. And then sometimes, not longs, but shorts know this. And then sometimes too many shorts step in and they squeeze now, or whatever. The algorithm is going to squeeze it or whatever. So that's what I try to keep in mind in terms of the risk management for buying micro cap and small cap stocks. Everything I do is for that. Okay. Everything I do is for that. So buying lows, that's pretty much bread and butter on gappers. I'm not chasing them ever. If I can't find the good reversal off the lows where all the shorts saw that bottom also, and if you're short, you know exactly what that means. It's wicked out through lows, maybe. I like to, especially these days, watch levels test. So if I think I see low a day, I want to see it test low a day. And I want to know that shorts are sitting there watching that test. And that's why I've called myself a short bias long trader, because when I'm watching price action in the morning, I'm watching it from the lens of go down further, please go down further, please go down further. Who else does that? Short sellers. That's the same mentality. So I put myself in that mentality. And then when it's not going down further, that's when I start to get interested in my long. And they've become for me somewhat predictable. It's just a matter of when they're gonna do it, and if they're and then the magnitude in which they reverse. Okay, so all of that, the lower it goes, the less risk for me. The less risk for me, and I want it to go lower. There's of course lines where price action's dead and stuff like that in my eyes, of course. But if I still deem the stock to have some sort of value left and bounce and shorts who are still there, essentially, is what this means to me. Then it becomes a very simple trade, which is price targets. And I am a big advocate of that because psychologically, if I have targets, I can execute, right? If I don't know where I'm going to sell it, how am I selling it and where? You're just trying to magically see the top and trade level 2 or something, in my eyes, whole dollar levels, I guess you can use, but that's been the mentality. It took a really long time to get all the way to what I do now, because it doesn't seem possible at first, like you look at the charts, where you can make the most money if you look at it, both sides at the end of the day. The problem is in real time manifesting that. So there's a lot of creativity involved too, to be long, where shorts are just waiting for levels to, hopefully you're a good patient short and you're waiting for those levels that you need to hit, For longs, it's a lot, for me at least, it's a lot of adaptability, a lot of discretion, um, and then a lot of trying to figure out what's going to move next and how it's moving, how algorithms are moving, the big volume stocks, um, all the different variables right now. So
One of the things that's interesting to me is that it seems that you're very focused on understanding both sides of the trade, not just what the bulls might be interested in, which ultimately is how you are going to want to trade this, but also giving a certain amount of respect, if that makes sense, and understanding to where shorts might be interested in either exiting the trade or entering the trade and staying far away from that. Um, are you always focused on keeping these two sort of bullish, bearish types of trades in consideration when you're looking for an entry point?
yes, I what concerns me when I'm looking to buy stocks are, and just in general for small cap, are the bigger players, the people with the bigger accounts, the people with the bigger size, the people that are going to be affecting the actual price action. And so the two people that I care about are institutional investors, um, your HC Wainwrights, your Aegises, and all the ones running the offerings, essentially the dilution, the dumping of the shares onto these companies, these financings and offerings, the ones who have millions of shares to dump. Okay. Those people I'm concerned about, where are they? They tell you where they are for the most part. They're either everywhere with an ATM or convertible shares where they can dump a lot of toxic financing right now, Anthony. A lot of toxic like that I've been seeing. My skin had 600 stocks under a buck today, over 600 stocks under a buck, and they're going down to like 3 cents again and 5 cents because there's a lot of toxic financing. And for those who don't really understand that, like death spiral financing, well, they get convertible shares at a price in discount to like VWAP and to the price that stock's trading at, and they can just keep converting at lower prices. So actually, the lower it goes, the more shares they get to accumulate. And I actually have strategies kind of revolving around this stuff right now too, because a lot of my strategies revolve around this fundamental idea of what these guys are doing, the institutional investors and the companies themselves, fundamentally, right? That's, at least for me, it's where some of the edge and many of the strategies I trade come from as a long in this space. Because if I can identify the worst, that naturally is going to eliminate me being dumped on. So them and short sellers, because the shorts, if there's a hedge fund, they're shorting these things for the most part. They're not buying penny stocks. Outside of very small occasions, I'm not seeing a lot of institutional ownership of these things. You know what I mean? So that's a big deal. The short sellers with the bigger accounts are the ones, and really it keeps me, as long as I can keep in that flow. It's a big part of me not being stopped out all the time, or taking huge losses all the time. I just know where shorts are, and where they make the most money is where I need to be the most careful. Where their risk is the highest, is when their risk is best, which is up near highs always, snuggling to highs, my risk is worse no matter what. So that's kind of what's molded my thing. Is I can be wrong a lot too with trading reversals, because I'm trade, and the psychology that the volume slows down there. The price comes to me. I'm not fighting with people for price on reversals. I'm actually taking advantage of the opposite, that they're fearful and they're selling to me still if I want. um, that whole dynamic is really beautiful to me, at least, the psychology behind it, and then having these price targets where I know the other player, which is me, retail longs in particular, in my eyes, um, which is still the masses. It's still kind of the masses of pawns, just smaller accounts and stuff like that. And we are pawns for the institutional investors, and we do, the shorts can thank us because we're the ones who drive these prices up. The institutional banks can thank us. The companies themselves can thank us. But I feel like it's a big scam, personally, that they get to do this to retail traders who don't know any better. To me, yeah, we've had pump and dumpers throughout time, and bad characters and frauds and stuff, like from the teaching aspect or trading aspect. But the companies themselves in small cap, I think, should be illegal. This whole process. I do. They don't, the reason it's not is because they tell you. It's up to you. They warn you not to invest in their stuff. If you look in 110Q, it's going to tell you, listen, this is why This is the risk. They have to do it legally. Of course, it's mumbo jumbo to us, but that's why we can't do anything about it, you know? So, and sorry, last note. And because it's a scam, if you know the scam, you can be on the right side of it. And these scammers, the companies themselves pump them. They pump well sometimes. I mean, huge runs, undoubted potential. You know, it's definitely there's so much potential every day within small cap to the long side, but there's also so much danger. So, and that's where the risk management comes into play. That's why I don't chase stocks. That's why I don't buy breakouts even really. Because I know if I'm an institutional investor with, say, 5 million shares to dump on a stock, they are going to, they're not going to say, let's be nice today, Anthony. How do you feel, Anthony? Let's be nice. Okay. No, they're not. They're going to dump they don't, they're going to do it indiscriminately and get their money back because these companies, they know this is the only way they get their money back. And because of that, if you understand that, you can kind of like scam with the scammers. And I have so many, not so many, but I have several strategies built upon that too.
You make a great point about legal disclaimers and the ability for these companies to raise funds or dilute a stock. How did you learn what you know about death spiral financing? Are you reading financial reports and quarterly earnings and things like that still? Or are you using maybe a service or anything or talking with other traders to learn maybe where an ATM offering is or some way that a company is going to be possibly looking to dilute shares?
Good question. Michael Good. Do you know Michael Good?
Love Michael Good.
Love Michael Good. Michael Good is where I learned about death spiral financing. I learned a lot from that guy from the fundamental aspect early in my trading career. And then I took that and I never stopped getting into fundamentals. I dug as deep as I pretty much could, as deep as I needed to get the answers I needed to trade and understand where the excess supply is going to be on these charts, basically, is all I'm really looking for, right? Where are they dumping? How many shares can they dump and where and when and how? And then beyond that, yeah, so that was kind of the first I had learned about it was through him. And then we talk about like your TOPS back in the day, tops and dries. Remember that? I mean, that was like once I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's what it looks like. These charts that go down and down and down and down, and they do a split, and they go down and down and down and down and down and do a split, and maybe a little pump, and then down and down and down, and you go back. Uh, the chart goes straight up and to the left, and it's like $1 million a share, like 3 years ago, right? That is those death spiral financing companies. And I don't know if it's just because, and I think it has a lot to do with happening in the markets over the last couple of years, but I've never seen it more prevalent. I feel like it's everywhere, and these guys are making a killing.
Roland, you recently hosted a trading psychology masterclass in Las Vegas. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about that event, which looked like it was really cool and informative for people who attended. And I also wanted to get your perspective on the importance of psychology in trading.
I'm super heavy on the psychology. I'm as a mentor and trading coach. Um, I It's just one of the biggest parts of it for me. The patterns and the strategies and stuff. Technical analysis is basic, in my opinion. After you've been doing it enough, it kind of becomes second nature. There's obvious levels to it, but it's basic. Fundamental analysis to me is basic. These are things that you can learn, like as in a classroom, you could learn, right? Just like anything. The psychological stuff is where, so everything. Why do you still not cut your loss when you're supposed to? You know, why are you still scared all the time to enter a stock? Things like this. Um, why are you not taking profits even though you're hitting your price targets? Do you even have price targets? A lot of things. Why are you impulsively buying into highs? All of these questions, there's some sort of psychological reason most of the time. And it's always fear and greed, some combination. We can be both at the same time. So I found it to be the most interesting. And I find that you have to fall prey to everything. Okay. We're going to fall prey to everything. Our impulses, our emotions. We are wired terribly to be traders. Most of us. Um, this notion that green is good and red is bad, or down is bad and up is good, and all these kind of things, that preconceived notions that happen, basic notions, all end up working against us at the end of the day when we're trying to trade. So it really is. I mean, when I try to teach people to dip buy, I mean, for a lot of people, the switch is immediate. They're like, oh my God, this makes so much sense, right? But for some people, they're going to battle it forever because they just can't get over these mental barriers. Um, the fear of pulling the trigger, all of these things, I had to experience them and walk through them, and they don't go away. And a lot of this came down to like my AA and my drug addict days, when I was trying to get right back then and fix my mind then. Well, how did I do that? It's the same as now. You have to be conscious. You got to speak about it with people. I think it's a big deal. Have someone who can help, someone who's been in that position who can be like, look, I've been here. Or even better yet, a bunch of people. That was the power within when I was getting sober in AA was look at this whole group of people who are like rehabbing themselves. You know what I mean? And that guy's been through it. So, and look at that guy. And now he's over here. So I can listen to him. You know what I mean? Because he's been in my shoes. So the psychological aspect, yeah, there's so much to it. And, I do like with my people every Friday, we do something called trader therapy, which is we all get together. And I started off with like, it's basically a confession of everywhere I screwed up, not with the patterns, but if I failed to cut losses for some reason, if I was revenge trading, if I was impulsively chasing because of FOMO and stuff like this, it's my opportunity to get up in front of everyone and talk about it. And when I'm journaling, that's all I'm really journaling are mistakes I made. All I want to know is, do I need to change my plans or do I need to change me? That's like the one thing I need to know as a trader every day when I'm reviewing my trades and I'm journaling. That's all I really care about. Are my plans good, but I messed it up through some of my psychological errors or something like that, or execution errors? Or did the trade just not work? Was it me or was it the trade? And then if it's the trade, okay, did that just not work today? Or do I need to maybe pump the brakes on that strategy for now? You know what I mean? And I really go about it that way. And if I can do that, it always kind of keeps me progressing forward. And I've been stuck in plenty of ruts over time. And it's always the resolution of the rut or that psychological issue that leads to me being able to deal with it in the future because it comes back. Um, all of these mental issues I've had and I eliminate come back at some point in time, inevitably. And but the problem, and the thing is now I got a new tool to use, and I can recognize way faster when it starts to pop up. Like, how it feels. So that's why I say you have to feel it, you have to go through it, and then you have to fix it. And consciousness is the kind of the first step of it. So we could talk about this for probably 10 or 12 hours right now. So,
And I think you bring up a good point, which is being conscious of how you're feeling, because trading psychology, it follows you everywhere. The day might be done, closing bell rings, you're still in your head about what you did that day, how you could have been better. You wake up in the middle of the night, you might be thinking about a trade and how you
right.
underperformed. So, how conscious are you throughout the day of your trading? And I know you mentioned journaling. Are you journaling every single day and keeping track of where you are mentally and how you could have been better? Is that something even a successful trader like you is still doing, journaling?
Yeah, it's the most important part for me, really, every day, because that's what's going to keep me. So, what I don't want is to be in the middle of like a 5 day revenge trading streak for some reason, which hasn't happened to me for, I don't know, as long as I can remember at this point, really, really long time, right? Since I was newer. Um, and so that's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to be conscious of these things as they pop up, these kind of mental defects, I call them, right? I have mental defects where I'm fearful at when I shouldn't be, or I'm greedy when I shouldn't be, or you know, any sort of these things. I'm impulsively buying, or I'm taking too much size, or revenge trading, right? Anytime any of this stuff pops up, I just want to be conscious of it. So for me, the journaling at the end of the day, that's the thing that's going to stop me the slide during the week, right? So if I can sit down and I just journal by hand, and I have a spreadsheet for my trades and some other websites and stuff that I keep track of stuff on. But the handwritten journal has always been the most powerful for me at the end of the day psychologically, because that's what that session is. It's not talking about, oh, this setup worked great and this and this and this. It's like, where was my headspace? Did I execute everything correctly? Was I cool, calm, and collected? Did I sell where I want to sell and execute my game plan? Essentially, is what I want to know. So I asked myself, did I execute these game plans? If not, well, where did I fail? And then if I failed on those game plans, there's got to be a reason. You know what I mean? So that's always been the deal. Um, and then the Friday trader therapies I do with my students where I get up first and then they have a chance if they want to get up in front of the whole Discord and be like, listen, there's where I screwed up and I give my 2 cents and the whole chat gives their 2 cents. So it's kind of cool. But that's more for me than my students. You know what I mean? It's more for me than the people I trade with. Like that for every Friday, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna, you know, maybe I was too fearful. Maybe I was missing sit-ups all week. And for me, when I'm missing sit-ups, I have mantras. For every psychological thing you have to have consciousness. And for me to eliminate it, some sort of mantra. Keep it kind of simple. But my thing and I didn't realize this till 2022 because I got so scared of trading for a while. I had never been scared, Anthony, of pulling the trigger on anything, man. I was always the opposite. I had to whittle away the gambler in me. And but I was petrified by the time my setup started popping up again in 2022 because the market sucked, man. They were tough. But by the time I was actually supposed to start hitting them, I was just so scared. And the mantra I gave myself, I just came up with it was just size down and press the buttons. That's what I told myself. All right, dude, it's okay. You remember how to do this. You're okay. Just because it's been a rough 6 months, buddy, size down, press the buttons. That started in like November or October of 2022. Also kind of coincided with a little shift in the markets, luckily for myself, not a little shift, a seismic shift where we were heading back towards highs in overall markets. I couldn't have known at the time, and I haven't stopped since then, right? It's by December, I was up to full size again. And then luckily it was a new tool. And I realized, oh my God, I can actually go size all the way down here and trade and still actually make a couple $100 a day and be happy, which I hadn't been happy with since 2019 or 18 or 17. You know what I mean? For a long time where that felt okay in terms of how much money I'm making on a daily basis or losing. So that was a big, big deal. I still use that now. Now my rules these days, because the markets have been so choppy, has been if my setup comes and I try to hit it and I take a loss or two in a row or three in a row, I pump the brakes immediately these days. And I can size and I'll size all the way back down to that, which is size down, press button size, which is risk a minuscule amount of money that I don't care about. $100, $50, and try to make 300, 500. That's what I'll do. It's an amazing thing. It protects me and I can still kind of be grinding forward. And then when I see those work, it gives me the confidence then that this pattern or the markets might be right for me to then press it a little bit. It's a way of me being able to adapt by using my P&L and kind of the psychology behind that and everything else.
I think that's helpful. Being able to recognize when you're not trading well and size down, press the buttons, continue to find your setups and trade them, even if it's with smaller size. Are you saying certain things when you're doing well and you're on a streak? And are they vastly different from when you're on a losing streak or have a big loss? What type of self-talk are you going through? And are they wildly different? Are you just looking for the next trade for the next day? What does that all look like?
I'm very cognizant of the self-talk. I'm a big believer in what are you telling yourself throughout a trade, and for me, here's the problem. You know what? A lot of people I work with, their self-talk is this. Well, this is how much I'm up. How much do I need to pay my rent tomorrow? Seriously, this is what happens to the people I'm trying to work with right now. And I work with them one-on-one and I don't know. Well, I remember what that was too. So, I mean, intra trade, that when the time comes to sell, things happen. They will start saying stuff like that to themselves or actually I'm down 100 on the day for my last trade, and on this trade I'm only up 75. Like, these are the thoughts that people and the self-speak people have during the trading day that is so detrimental. Trading your P&L, trading your life, or trading money. If you need money, however much money you try to make all of that stuff is what people are thinking about. My self-talk intra trade and throughout the day needs to be, okay, where's my stop? This is literally what I say to myself. Where's my stop? Where am I going to sell? So where am I take profits? Where's this chart? What day of the week is it? What's the catalyst? This is the self-talk, just what's happening with the chart and then objective price action. You know what I mean? My P&L, I don't look at hardly ever. I really don't. To each their own, but that's just what works for me. I know what the math is in my head. I don't need to see the red number when I take my position. I don't need it. You know what I mean? I know what my risk is. I know where my reward is. is it worth the squeeze? And then it's like, well, what have charts been doing lately? That's the self speak for me. And then when it comes to the win or loss, once I take my position, the self speak is all right, cut. This is literally my self speak. Cut the loss. So when I take a position, I open up a market stop or a market sell order for my entire position, depending on size, obviously, and liquidity. But most of the time, hopefully, I'm in something liquid and sized where I'm not affecting the stock. And if that's the case, I open up a stop. I open up a market sell order immediately because of the area I'm playing off of too. Um, and then I'll mitigate risk in different ways. But that's the first thing. That's the closest. Hopefully, I'm going to beat a risk on this entire trade is my entry. And then at that point, the second it moves away, I take the stop off. And the next thing is, all right, sell into target one. What's your first target? That's it. Is it going to get there? And I'm watching level two. I'm watching tape, and I'm just trying my best to objectively gauge price action. Then when the win comes or the loss, I know I've learned over time that no matter what, for me, the win is always underwhelming. Always. I just know for me, my biggest wins have been underwhelming. Um, the bigger losses have stung more than the big wins have been underwhelming for sure. They've hurt more. But then I realized this whole thing about dopamine. I was I watched this. There's a guy named Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist from Stanford. He's awesome. And he does a lot of stuff on dopamine that made me realize that that's exactly what it is. We get the dopamine during the trade, and the hunt for the trade is what creates the dopamine. It's not the money you make at the end, because they've been doing a lot of research on this. They used to think, it's the indulging in the prize at the end that creates dopamine, and the candy itself, when you eat it, that creates dopamine in your mind. But it's actually like the anticipation of it and the going to get it, right? Same with the drug addict. When I was and I can tell you, I'd get seriously, seriously sick if I didn't have opiates in my system when I was addicted to them. And if I didn't have any, I would be so sick. We're talking like the flu times a million in your bones. It's kind of how it felt, like a really terrible feeling. But if I knew someone was on their way with some Percocet for me or some kind of drug for me, I'd get better immediately. Dopamine would surge through my system, and I didn't even have it yet. So it wasn't even just the amount of dopamine that was coming from the drugs themselves. And now what they've also learned about dopamine is that the higher you go, whatever the high is in terms of that you have a baseline dopamine level, when your dopamine spikes, for whatever reason, at some point it's going to go back down below base level an equal amount. So which totally accounts for so many events in life, because it's the building, and then there's always a letdown at the end. Think about it. You get the promotion you've been working for literally ever. It's kind of exciting, but then the next day you feel shitty. Maybe it's not like the best feeling in the world. Athletes who retire explains a lot. They all of a sudden their life purpose is gone. The dopamine's gone, and I believe this has happened to us traders every day, all day. This cycle of like, oh, I'm gonna, and when you can really, really understand that, no matter what, every trade becomes a letdown, it gets easier for me to just take profits. You know what I mean? And not be a greedy asshole. Because I know, guess what? It's still going to feel shitty if I top tick this thing later. Maybe that's the only way it won't feel completely shit, right? So I've gotten over that. And the fact that, guess what? I'm going to sell some into price target one, hopefully some into two, some into three, and see where the chips fall where they may. And my job is to do my best to try to maximize that return from that process, so, and kind of letting the chips fall where they may. So in that vein, you don't ever see me jumping for joy behind my computer. I have some live stuff on YouTube and stuff like that. If you watch any of the lives where I'm making some money or losing money, the loss, I always talk about the loss being the easiest trade for me, because I just cut it and the trade's over. It's easy to me. I open that market order, and then that's one click of my button, and I'm not doing any work anymore. And I did my job still technically. It's when the trade starts working and I have to figure out how much to size out and where. And I know at the end of this, it's going to underwhelm me. So I have to deal with this. Does that make sense? So It's a weird kind of place I live in every day, but it's all self-talk, and it's all designed to make sure that I just sell where I'm supposed to. And I don't care about selling and taking a loss when I'm supposed to.
Absolutely. And thank you. I think that's absolutely fascinating insights into dopamine and why traders feel the way they do, not just in the trade, but after the trade as well. One of the things I wanted to talk about, Roland, which is connected to all of this, is trading education. You've helped mentor and train traders who've gone on to make six, seven, eight figures in profits. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the characteristics that you see in traders who go on to do well. Do they share certain traits or habits or anything like that?
Yes. Passion, obsession with trading and the markets, passion to get better, openness, a lot of humility. A lot of the traders I know are just super humble, but also confident, kind of an air of confidence about them. They know what they're doing because they know what they're talking about and they make money in the markets. Um, the ability to risk, to put on risk. I've not met too many traders who struggled with that, really good traders, at least. And I've met some who struggled at first with it, but then were able to overcome that. So I'm not saying just because you're not a gambler right out the gate, but I will say most of the traders that I know didn't have to be coaxed. Like if you like my first trade story was I got on etrade.com. I went in the chat. Someone said a thing. I bought it online. I clicked refresh until I was up 30% and then I sold it. Right. That's not someone who struggles with the idea. I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. Right. I was just ready to go. So there's a lot to it, but I've seen also people of all different intellects and backgrounds and psychological dispositions and monetary positions and life values and all that good stuff. People of all natures and walks can make it for sure, I believe.
Do you find that there are certain characteristics or traits for traders who tend to struggle or not make it?
Usually, lack of patience. That is when I'm working with people, they need to know now how to make money now. And it's usually because they need money now. So, unfortunately, it's a tough place. If you are coming to trading to just make money now, you're in big trouble. It's going to be really, you're putting yourself in. And I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm not. I'm saying that it's going to be a really difficult thing to do. You're going to struggle a lot more psychologically with not being able to objectively gauge price action than most people. And you're not going to be able to have the patience to sit around and understand that there's a lot of screen time involved here to form the kind of discretion that you can trust. To be able to trust yourself speak takes a long time. It took me a really long time to get to the point where I can trust it. And then you trust it too much and you get in trouble there too. So there are all these ebbs and flows. But I'd say that the person who needs money today will be the person who has the most difficulty today. Someone who can have a bigger picture time. And I don't mean it's going to take 10 years to learn how to trade. I know some people, and I have some students who are having some crazy success rather quickly with certain ideas, at least. And um, yeah, that's pretty much outside of that. If you're coachable and you're teachable and you're willing to be open. Um, I'm not the person to say it. I'll never be that person who's going to be like, you can't make it because blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Um, it's more so just like, how badly do you want it? Will you be willing to, how open are you going to be? And the understanding that it's not get rich quick. It's not. The people who make money really fast, they lose it all really fast. And then that's even worse, I feel like, you know, worse of a place to come from.
And for traders who are listening who might be struggling, whether it's big losses, losing streak, not having a setup that's defined, sort of just random trades and partaking in all sorts of things that, a lot of traders still fall into, what advice would you give to those traders who are struggling?
Something simple that we often ask ourselves, which is, if I just sold where I bought, I'd be profitable. You're right. First of all, and I know how many of you have had that thought because I did too. Well, guess what? Go back through your trades, see which ones didn't work and where you sold. I'm sorry, where you were buying them, and then figure out how you could have sold there. And there aren't too many. It's funny because there's not too many places to go. Okay. When you start looking at these charts, this is what I'm trying to say is you can keep it quite simple. Um, if you've never had a mentor, if you've never worked with groups of traders, I think it's important. I think it can be a big, big deal. If you're just going it alone and you don't know anything and you've not had any education and you're struggling really, really badly, there's a reason for that. There are things that you just don't know that affect price action and price. that if you don't know it, you're just another pawn. In my eyes, I call them sheep. You're one of the sheep that they use to dump on. That's what you become. And because of that, it's always unfair to you, and it's always seems like impossible, and it's always a scam, right? You just don't know what the scam is. There is a scam 100% absolutely. You just don't know what it is. And if you knew, it's very powerful scenarios that you can actually base and make money off of these scams, you know? So that would be it. Hang in there, be patient with yourself. If you've had a mentor for a long time, and there's some people I work with now who have been with people like as one or two specific mentors for like 5 or 7 years and have never made money. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Trading's hard, but maybe just try something different. I got somewhere by getting multiple viewpoints. I learned so much from Nate's guides. I never was in IU personally, um, but I have a lot of students who are in IU and love IU. And I learned so much from Nate's guides. About it molded a lot of the price, like of my understanding of parabolics and price action and short sellers and longs. He does a lot of longing. So I was, it wasn't just Tim Sykes' stuff. It wasn't just Gertani's guide, my holy grail, that was a huge part. It wasn't just LX21, it wasn't just Nate, it was everyone. So that's one thing, find something that will resonate with you and then try that, but don't be stuck. We only have one life. We have one life. And I see people just for too long, just do something that doesn't work. So that's my whole thing. That's psycho. Back in AA, we called the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So with alcohol, is just trying different ways to drink, or maybe we'll try this drink or that drink, or maybe we'll only drink on Saturdays, or and then it ends up leading to something bad. With trading, it's the same thing. We just come to the markets and do the same thing every day, and we don't make money, and you've been doing it for years. That's the definition of insanity, is it not? So that would be kind of one of the other things is if you don't have, groups, find groups of people to talk to. It will help. Find a good mentor, find a reliable mentor. And then if you've been with a mentor and it's not working, it doesn't hurt you're not married. You know what I mean? Ain't your wife.
If you're looking to change up your trading routine, you might want to check out what Investors Underground has to offer. You'll have access to courses and mentors to learn from, some of the best technology available for scanning stocks and breaking news, and access to the chat rooms where you'll find a vibrant community of focused traders who share their trade ideas in real time every single day. You'll also have access to the improved morning broadcast where Nate and other moderators detail their trade plans for the day ahead during the pre-market, the midweek study session with Sam, webinars, moderator watch lists, and all the other resources that Investors Underground has to offer. Listeners of the podcast can access special deals at investorsunderground.com/YouTube. And now, back to our interview with Roland Wolf. If it's okay with you, I'd love to go through a lightning round set of questions. Quick questions, pretty quick answers. Is that okay?
Yeah.
The first question that I have is, what do you consider to be your greatest strength as a trader?
Equal parts risk management and pattern recognition.
Are there any specific technical indicators that you like to have on your charts when you're trading?
VWAP, volume, those are the only two.
Are there any areas of your trading that you're still working to improve on?
Yes. Sizing up specifically I've not quite gotten to the size that I've wanted to over time. So that's the main thing I'm working on right now.
And if you could go back and give yourself one piece of trading advice, what do you think it would be? And do you think you would listen to it?
Yes, I would listen. And the first thing I would say, the first advice I would give myself is learn about the instrument that you are freaking trading. I didn't know anything about it, about stocks or the markets or supply and demand or institutional investors or dilution or short sellers or anything really. So that's where I would start. I would tell myself, definitely you need to figure out who the players are and then get in the flow of the markets, that. And I would also tell myself, figure out how to buy low a day. Those two things.
Do you believe there are any myths or misperceptions that exist about trading?
Yeah. I think it's all one big myth and misperception, right? Everyone thinks you can just come here and make money. That's not the case. Everyone markets that. So that's one of the problems. I also think people need to look at it what it is. They need to be realistic about what trading is and It's not necessarily the golden ticket to life, for a lot of people, especially. If you can have the right perspective, if you can have the right perspective behind your trading, for me, it started as a side hustle, which was a perfect perspective to have, in my opinion. And then if the passion's there and then the things start to click for you and maybe some natural talent as well, um, things can kind of progress. So
If you could give one piece of trading advice to all new traders, what do you think it would be?
one piece of trading advice, that's always been such a tough question. I would say I would say the same thing that I would go back and tell myself. Learn what the hell you're trading. People don't have no clue what they're trading down here. They don't know that they're pawns. Figure out why you're the pawn and then don't be the pawn. If you can do that, you are immediately separating yourself from the rest of the long retail traders in my book. If you can figure out where these companies are dumping, why and how, figure out how dilution works, get into the fundamentals, in other words, a little bit. Understand that stuff. It will give you a leg up in terms of not buying toxic crap. And if you don't do that, your eyes are naturally going to gravitate towards stocks that actually have potential to move.
At what point do you think a trader can say that they've made it or they're successful in trading?
I don't think that there's a specific point, to each their own, really, at the end of the day. What does success look like to you? Are you trying to trade part-time and supplement your income? And then if that's the case and you're successfully taking some money out of the markets part-time, more than your paycheck, and you're able to pay your rent with your trading or something like that, if that's what success looks like to you, then that's amazing. You know what I mean? I love working with people who have that kind of perspective because actually magical things can happen. That's where my perspective was when I started. It wasn't like I came in to make $1 million and I had no clue there was this teach. I didn't even want to teach at all. I wanted to make a little side money for my family. You know what I mean? So it depends what you want. This is more than I ever would have imagined, to be honest, what it became. And if I could go back in time, I would have told myself to go get your damn law degree too. Simultaneously, I could have done it. Right. So that's a big deal to me. I don't think anyone should put all their eggs in this basket, because we don't know what the markets will bring. We don't even know the markets will be here next year. Shit can happen in the world and we don't know. I'm serious. What would happen? I don't know. I know it's not a real thing, but I think about that often, you know? Um, so that's what I'll say, have the right perspective specifically.
And is there anything you do away from the trading desk that benefits you and is helpful to you as a trader?
Yeah. Anything I do, uh, in terms of my health, I try to eat well. I try to get sleep at night. I try to get a workout 5 to 6 days a week, even if it's only 30, 45 minutes. All of these things to try to mitigate the negative effects of being a trader, which is sitting here at my desk, just sitting all day and the high stress nature of our job. Um, and then I find stuff like fishing. Fishing is one of my favorite pastimes. Golf are two of my favorite pastimes. So I love golfing, love fishing. Both of them feed the trader in me, feed a good part of the trader and the patience and the diligence and the hard work and stuff like that. But especially fishing, that's more the meditation for me. I guess you could call it a meditative state where I still have to come up with a trading plan. It's kind of interesting. But so for those who don't understand, and I know this is a lightning round, but screw it, bass fishing, it's specific. Like there's a color you pick of lure, like the kind of lure, the diameter of the line I use, the thickness of the rod that I use, the speed ratio of the reel that I use, all based on the weather, the clouds, the water temperature and clarity, what season it is. Are they in the spawn? There's so many variables that it feeds the trading so much for me because so that's what I do. I weigh out all the variables and I have to pick all of that stuff. What am I going to throw into the water? But then once I throw it into the water, now I'm just executing. So now it's like feeling, now I'm just so in tune with this lure in the water. And that's all that matters is trying to feel what it's doing and imagining what it's doing. So the second I get a bite, I'm so in tune, I feel it and I reel down and got the fish, right? Just like trading. And then at that point, I got to get the fish in. It ain't even done. It just begun. The fish could pop off. There's a lot of things that can happen. The line could break. So I got to be careful. So that to me is why fishing is like such an amazing exercise for trading because I have to determine all the variables first and then I have to execute. And within that execution comes clarity of mind And it's kind of weird. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but I think it's a great parallel to trading personally. Oh, the other thing is you could be totally right. You could be totally right about everything and then throw that color and they just don't want it today. Or you could actually be somewhere with no fish, even worse. You know what I mean? Where in which case all this work I'm doing doesn't matter. So that's what I say. And it's just like stock trading. I could have all the best ideas or I could be in a stock, but no one cares about it. I'm in the wrong stock. There's no traders there to trade. It's not going to move, So it's kind of like that. And I don't know. I love the parallels between trading and some activities. And those are the activities I gravitate towards because I think they all go together.
And for those listening who would like to learn more about you, the way you trade, or maybe even contact you, how can they do so?
Oh, I'm super accessible compared to a lot of people. I try to make myself accessible at least. Um, YouTube, right on YouTube, you can catch some of my lessons. Just search Roland Wolf 86. Same with Twitter, Instagram, Roland Wolf 86. Those are the only ones. I probably have more scammers than anyone. I don't know why. Maybe because I have kids and people think it's wholesome or something. But I have so many scammers. So Roland Wolf 86 there. rwtrades.com, TRADES. That's, you can get my email list and anything else you want there, guides and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. I'm pretty accessible. If you DM me anywhere, I answer, I try to at least. So
Roland, thank you so much for chatting with me today and for being so transparent, vulnerable, and just really, really helpful in general during this conversation and to everybody out there who contacts you. Thank you so much.
oh man, it's so great speaking with you again. And hopefully we'll get to speak again in the future.
We hope you enjoyed this interview on the Investors Underground podcast. We have more great interviews that we believe you might also like, so don't forget to subscribe. You'll be notified of upcoming releases the moment they become available. Thanks for watching.